Good afternoon, everybody. Atlanta, thanks for having us. Gassa, thanks for having us. Round of applause for Maggiano's wait staff and the food. Incredible. Got some gifts. All right, so my name is Tommy. I'm with a company called StoragePug. We're out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Today, we're going to talk about some of the coolest operators that I know. We're going to talk about 4 different operators and how they do marketing specifically. Before we get into that, show of hands, have you been in the industry for at least 1 year? Stephanie, Stephen, welcome to the industry, y'all. 5 years. 10? 15? 20? 25? 40? How long have you two been in the industry? The 70s. We're going on 50 years? Wow, sir. 85, right on. So 39. Round of applause for those guys and everyone. So we got some really cool people. So you see in different ways to market. So you bid and they'll come. What about you? Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So I'd like to think that marketing has changed since 1975 and 1985. And what do you think? Yeah, I think it's changed. Yeah. So here's the thing about marketing, though. Good marketing makes the company look smart, makes the company look really cool. Now, where's the trick? Alphabetical order. What a crazy system, though. Let's pause real quick before I get into my presentation. Let's talk about that. What kind of system is let's just be alphabetical? Who came up with that? Yeah. How crazy was that? So now we have 5A, AAA in Hawaii, right? We have 7A. There's a 7A storage. They've been around since the 80s. That's crazy. We said A-1, there's a lot of A-1s. Yeah, we don't market like that anymore. And probably for good reason, because now we come up with cool names. Who has a cool name for their facility, Jane?
Little Vine.
Where did Little Vine come from?
That's the actual community.
Isn't that so much better than AAA-4A self-storage in Little Vine? Love that. But let's talk about marketing real quick. Good marketing makes the company look smart. But we think that great marketing makes the customer feel smart. Let's say that again, right? Good marketing makes the company look smart. Great marketing makes the customer feel smart. Why is that so important? Good marketing gets people to see you, right? You have a good signage, you have good website, good SEO, customers can find you, right? They rent from you, but you treat them terribly. What's that customer feel? They don't feel so good. Yeah. The number one, it's actually not number one, it's a top 3. I can't remember if it was 1, 2, or 3, but it's a top 3. The top 3 reason why people don't buy is the fear of buyer's remorse. It's not that they don't need it. It's not that it's too expensive, but it's the fact that they might regret it tomorrow. So great marketing makes the customer feel smart because now they feel like they made a fantastic decision to store with your facility over someone else. A guy named Joe, he's the former VP of marketing of a big old company called HubSpot up in Boston. He wrote a book and this was in his book. Let's talk about how we can do marketing that makes our customers feel smart. We met with 4 different operators who have a very solid foundation and root in Georgia. They got a bunch of facilities in Georgia and we talked to them. We asked them all of these questions, things like, what are marketing channels that you are using? No one said Yellow Pages. We asked them things like, which marketing channels are no longer effective? How do you stand out against the REITs? What are you doing that sets you apart from someone else? And we asked them a bunch of these questions. We spent over, hardly 15 hours in interviews. And we came up with a lot of good data. Was that? Easily 15 hours. And that was just an interview. Now we had to synthesize. I do want to start with what all of them had in common. And again, we're talking about the highest performing operators, the best of the best, right? Number 1, every one of them relied on their website to process online rentals. Every one of them. And some of them even told us that it's the primary way they get rentals. Number 2 is they relied heavily on their Google business profiles. Number 3, they all had really fantastic managers. Now, this is no attack on hybrid or virtual or unmanned or remote managed facilities, but this was a commonality that we discovered when we interviewed all of these operators was, yeah, they had good managers. Doesn't mean that the manager was on site every day. It just meant that the facility was well managed. Number 4 was they all had data and they did something with the data. Didn't mean that they were data scientists. It just meant that they had their eyes on the ball. Number 5, something that was interesting is over the last 18 months, price per acquisition has gone up, which is code word for marketing has gone up. And then number 6 is they're all good neighbors. You mentioned Little Vine community, right? You're part of a community. Every one of the operators we talked to wasn't just they weren't just a taker. They weren't just there to get business. They actually they became part of their community. They gave back to their community. But we thought that was pretty interesting. So that's why we wanted to start here is like what we're about to talk about when we break down these 4 case studies for these operators is don't forget that they do all of these things already. They all have amazing websites. They all rent online. They all meet their customers where they are. They all treat their customers really well. And some of the people that we interviewed are right here in this room, and I'm excited to call them out. So any questions about these 6 commonalities? 7 years ago, when we started StoragePug in 2017, we gave a presentation, and in the room, there was about 150 or so. Less than 10% of the people offered a website with online rentals. In fact, none of the REITs, red doors, green doors, orange doors, blue doors at the time, none of them offered online rentals. It wasn't until 2019 that Life Storage was the first major operator to offer full online rentals with credit card, everything. Who here in this room today offers online rentals? Yeah, I love to see that. It's been such a massive shift. And I think it's for the best. I think consumers just expect it. Think about, again, good marketing makes you look good, but great marketing makes your customer feel good. So think about what your customers are doing every day, right? They're on Amazon, they're getting DoorDash, they're shopping on Airbnb, they're booking their flights. They're doing everything right from their phones. Self-storage as an industry, we shouldn't treat ourselves any different, right? We're not better than Amazon, right? So we should treat our customers the same way that Amazon treats their customers. Let's dive into this. We broke down some of the most popular marketing channels. Cost per pay-per-click, which is Google Ads, SpareFoot, grassroots marketing, social media, and community events. The green checks represent this particular operator treated this as a high priority. This is something they focus on, they train their staff on, they hang their hat on, and they think that they're the best at. The yellow check marks are medium. They do it. They think it's part of their strategy, but it's not a primary part of their strategy. And then the blue check marks are relatively lower priority. And so the 4 operators that we interviewed were the Flying Storage Group, Blue Sky Self-Storage, Universal Storage Group, and Storage Asset Management. If you are one of these, will you raise your hand? Some people can. There we go. We're very excited to pick on you throughout this session. Thank you, by the way, for giving us so much of your time. So yeah, as you can see here, Google Ads has been a primary priority for a lot of operators these last 18 months, right? Something happened in 2020 that caused a lot of people to want self-storage. The peak of self-storage demand was the summer of 2021. And ever since then, it just waned. 2023 was our first year of having semi-regular seasonality to the point where maybe we had no seasonality and it was just slow for a lot of operators. 2024, starting off a little slow as well, which means that marketing has to increase. And the REITs, and there's not a slide in here, but all the REITs have increased. Some of the REITs have doubled their marketing spend on a per store basis, on top of doing all the other things they're doing, which is aggressive rate management and aggressive street rates. But some of the other things that I think were really cool is the community events. All the operators we talked to did some form of community events, and then some of them actually use those as their primary or priority channel for them, where they get a lot of customers. So let's dive into each of these operators. So the first one here is the Flying Storage Group. They operate 4 facilities. Yep. And something they do that I thought was actually neat, they talked about this, is mystery shopping, where they actually just check out their competition. Hey, what do we like? Let me call my neighbor and either check on their rates or just see what their customer service skills are. We've all called a storage facility, right? Who's called a storage facility in the last 12 months? Yeah. Did they answer like this? Hey, this is Tommy at StoragePug. thank you for calling. How can I help you today? No, that's not how they answer the phone. Hello? Maybe that, but it's more so, how do they normally answer the phone, Kevin? Yeah. Hello? It's more like that, right? That's your competition. And so all you have to do is you can just say hello, but say it nicer. But even better, say your name and say who they are. And so this is something that Kevin does. I thought was really neat, was just to see what the vibes are amongst his competitors, but also while he's talking to them, figure out what the rates are, what units are most available in your facility, right? And you become friendly with your neighbors. And there are a lot of facilities who literally refer business to the facility next to them. Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to help the customer. And if that customer is not good for me, maybe they're good for you. The other thing that Kevin does that I think is part of the reason why he's the manager of the year, 2023. Round of applause for Kevin, please. The Georgia Self-Storage Association Manager of the Year. Customer service is king. He treats his customers so well. He cares for them, offers them water when they walk in, answers the phone kindly, actually just answers the phone when they call. I think the other alternative when you're calling the facilities is no one answers. You leave a voicemail if you're able to, no one calls you back, right? And so in this day, maybe you could have done that in 2021. Not that it was right. You were still probably renting units in 2021, even if you were doing that poorly. But today you have no excuse, right? And the other thing is, don't let a lead walk away. But I think Kevin mentioned something. We actually had a very interesting conversation during lunch. Maybe not every customer is the right customer. But you want to make sure that you follow up. You want to make sure you get every chance you get. And Kevin, how do you track every lead that comes in? Whether they walk in person or they call in, what systems are you using to track leads? Yeah. So Kevin said he uses a tool called Lead to Lease. It's built into his management software called SiteLink. So if you're the operator or the manager or the person who answers the phone at your facility, knowing your software is a big part of your marketing. The other piece here is that they do a lot of tracking. So they have tracking phone numbers, that sort of thing. And the other thing they've done really well is they've done smart upgrades. As you can see here, their smaller units are valuable long-term because your price per square footage on a 5x5 actually often beats the price per square foot on a 10x10 or even a larger unit, right? So these are all cool things he's doing. And one thing that he noted I thought was cool, and I wanted to share this, is nowadays customers are like, I can probably get a cheaper unit down the street. And it's probably true. The street rate for the facility down the street probably is cheaper. So what Kevin does as a king of customer service is, hey, how about I give you that discount? I can discount this unit for a few months. How long do you plan on being here? You think you'll be here for 2 or 3 months? How about I give you that discounted rate? And then after this discount expires, it goes back to your normal rate, right? And that's awesome. Customer feels validated. They felt heard. And they get a good deal out of this, right? Versus what someone else might do, which is, hey, you know what? I will just price match, period. And so all of a sudden, you're costing yourself, as you see here, let's say they're 8 months at the discounted rate and then they stay 5 extra months at the normal rate versus staying a full 13 months at the discounted rate. You just cost your facility a few $100 on that one customer, right? So this allows the operator and the facility to do well, but also help the customer feel validated. So I thought that was a cool technique that Kevin does. Anyone else do this at your facilities when you do either price matching or concessions? Yeah. So I think the key takeaway here is validate and hear what the customer's concerns are. And especially in this climate, they can probably go to Extra Space and get that unit for way cheaper. We all know what's going to happen in 90 days, right? So we want to help them not learn that lesson. But I think the other thing is, if you do a concession, make sure that's an expiring concession, not one that's a permanent, everlasting concession. So Kevin and Eric and the Case family, thank you for letting us feature you all. These are their facilities. You can check them out. You can see it from afar. If you email hello@storagepug.com, we'll make sure you get these slides so you can check out all these facilities. The next brand is Blue Sky Self Storage. They have a handful of facilities all throughout Georgia. They're managed by Argus, which is a pretty large national third-party management firm. But something they do that they mentioned anyways, is phone friendly. So everything they do is they think about what it looks like on someone's phone. So mobile friendly stuff, making sure that if someone actually calls, that the call center or the operator at the store knows the script, right? So this is something that they care about. The other thing is No facility is the same. So they manage almost 300 facilities all across the US. About 20 of those facilities are right here in Georgia, and each facility is a little bit different. Now, the playbook is probably 80% the same across all these facilities, but they leave room to have some tailored fit stuff to make sure that one facility is a little bit better than the other. So if you, for example, if you're in Mason or in Warner Robins, that marketing strategy might look a little different if you're in downtown Atlanta. And so by being a more sophisticated savvy operator, they're able to dial in what's needed on one place or the other. So for example, Warner Robins might need more Google ads than Mason for whatever reason, or maybe downtown Atlanta, you do want to be on SpareFoot. So these are all different things that they're able to do and tailor each facility individually. The other thing, education is something huge that they educate their managers on, is specifically educating them on best practice on how to get reviews. I think they do a really good job at this. And of course, the idea here is that you don't want to incentivize your customers to leave you a review. That's actually bad. That's against Google's terms of service. And also fake reviews are actually just illegal federally. It's against the FTC. So you can actually get in legal trouble by generating false reviews. So educating your managers on how to get good reviews is a big part of their training. Customer service, again, there's a theme here, right? Customer service is king, customer service is key. And I think the other thing they do really well, honestly, and Jason, who's their director of marketing, he's always keeping an eye on his data. He looks at it on month-over-month basis. He also looks at his data year-over-year, same period comparison basis. Right? So if he's reviewing March data, he's reviewing March against February. He's also reviewing March against March of 2023 as well. So if you're not familiar, if you're not, if you didn't go to school and you weren't the data nerd and you weren't the Excel spreadsheet person, I think that's a cool takeaway is, review your data month over month as well as same period year over year. And this is a lesson that they teach all of their managers and their entire marketing crew is 1 month is not a trend, 2 months is on its way to a trend, and 3 months is definitely a trend. So they work with a lot of investors who get antsy when we have a slow month, and let's just wait it out and see what next months look like. But if we're 3 months in and we're observing the same pattern, I think now it's time to take some real action. And their marketing team consists of 5 people, led by Jason, and they've got 4 other associates. Really cool group. Next group here, the hat lady herself, Universal Storage Group. Stacy, thank you for spending some time with Carly. I thought y'all's story was really cool. No surprise here. Strength in locality, right? The REITs, they have all the advantages that are obvious. They are good with websites. They're good with SEO. They're good with Google ads. Generally, they're decent with technology, right? And we think that oftentimes if you're a REIT, that you can skip the line in some of those things. And you know what? There's a credibility to that. If I was a brand new facility and I hired Public Storage to manage my facility, I might be on the first page of Google tomorrow, just because Public Storage is so big. And that's true. That said, on the flip side, though your facility managers, you yourself as an operator, will know your local area better than the REITs ever will. How could you, right? If you're Extra Space and you have 30-something hundred facilities, how can you know every market as well as someone who lives there? Shay, where do you live again? Yeah, more about Jasper than anyone else in this room, probably. Yes. Way to go, Jasper, right? And so you as a local operator, that's an advantage that you have. So lean into that, right? Which means that you can know your communities better. You can know what Jasper cares about. Jane can know what Little Vine cares about. That no one else could, right? And the REIT, because they are so leaning heavy into their strengths, which they should. Don't get me wrong. If I'm Public Storage, I'm going to lean into SEO and Google ads. That's what I do, right? This is now a hole in the market that you can own in Jasper, for example, right? The other thing is knowledge and competition. So if this sounds familiar to what Kevin does, this is exactly what Universal Storage Group does. They know what their competitors are doing, what kind of marketing tactics they're doing, their prices, their availability. They're getting an idea of what is the competition doing so that I can either adapt or just ignore. Just because the competition doing something doesn't mean that you need to follow their trends, but it's a good idea to know. And then on the rare occasion, customer comes in and you don't have the particular product that the customer is looking for. Oh yeah. Joe Schmo down the road, he actually offers that. Let me get you their information. So now the customer's walking out very happy, they're very satisfied, and they feel good. Even though they're not your paying customer, in the future they could be, right? Sometimes they do promotions or actually dial back promotions when the students are starting to lease up. Who here has a facility near a university? Quite a few of us. We all know what are the typical trends of a student store. Someone to raise their hand over here. What are some trends what are things that you notice about students? Short term. Yeah, short term is in 2 or 3 months. What else? What else is about a student? Yes, no way. Okay. So in case the other room couldn't hear, so she offers like a lot of parking spaces to the high school, Chambly High School, because they don't have parking spaces. They have limited parking spaces. Yeah, that is very interesting. Anyone else has rents to students next to a university or a school that they know some trends about? I think he mentioned over there, short term. What else? Small units. Yeah, so Stacy said more small units. They're probably renting a 5x5 or a 5x10. Because you think about the student, right? They're moving out of a dorm most likely, right? The students who have apartments aren't probably renting storage. It's the kids who are moving out of a dorm. And I remember living in the dorm at UT Knoxville. I loaded everything in the back of my Civic and moved it back home to my mom's house for the summer and then moved right back. And so something that Universal does, I thought was actually very smart, is they reduce their spend on SpareFoot, reduce their spend on Google Ads, and reduce their concessions during the move out season of college students. So like in April, May, actually right around this time is when they're reducing that, because now you're not having to pay the same amount of money for a student that might stay 2 or 3 months, who's renting a 5x5 or a 5x10. That's very smart. Here we go. Yes. Much like Argus, they tailor everything by store as well here at Universal Storage Group. The other 4-point here, I thought this was a cool data point. Not all data is equal. So true, the note says here, truest conversion tracks all the way to when the customer pays you real money for X amount of time. So basically what this means is you can have all the charts and all the data and all the projections you want. At the end of the day, though, the real thing that matters is how long that customer actually stays and how much rent you were able to collect. And I say able to collect because sometimes you can't collect on 100% of the rent. We actually just had that conversation during lunch. People are important. And again, if you notice a trend here, right? Customer service is king. Customer service is key. Humans are important, right? We have to know that when actually, Shay, I think you might have said it during lunch, that you wish you had a good degree in psychology and became a counselor because that's really what you do. And I think that's real. As an operator, someone who stands there in the front of the store, answering the phone or greeting guests as they come in, yeah, they're dealing with a lot of stuff. Not everyone is renting a storage unit because they just have extra stuff. That is a percentage of people, right? But I would argue that more than half of the people are dealing with some kind of life crisis, whether it's a good crisis or a bad crisis, they're dealing with something. There's this 18 Ds that I think we talked about, right? Death, divorce, all of those things. There's also like exciting things. I got a new job, and so now I can buy a bigger house, right? Or, hey, I'm retiring. That's actually a great time, but I'm downsizing now. And so it's not just negative crises, it's also opportunities there. But either way, there's a lot of emotion going on. And so if we know this going in, the good marketers, the good companies who perform great marketing, allow their managers, allow their staff, allow the operators to connect to the customers on a one-to-one, human-to-human level. And then, yeah, I thought this was cool. Weather matters, especially in the Southeast, especially in Georgia, right? Was Georgia part of the eclipse news yesterday?
80%. We were only
80%. Knoxville was what, Carly? It doesn't matter because it was gray. It was just clouds. But I think you're right. It was 87, 89%. But yeah, weather matters. I thought this was a really cool note. None of the other operators I talked to mentioned this, and I thought it was like, yeah, that's actually really neat. Is that, yeah, if you know that we're about to have 7 days of gross weather, maybe we shouldn't market as much because those humans aren't going to rent a U-Haul truck and move in the hail and ice and snow. So I thought that was a really cool note. Again, going back to what Stacy said about, yeah, this is tailored from a facility to facility basis. Love that note. So yeah, so I thought this was cool. If you're using SpareFoot, the main thing is to assure they are not buying Google Ads with your brand name, selling your own customer back to you. Show of hands real quick if you use SpareFoot. Show of hands if you don't know who SpareFoot is. And Spelkin as the guy who built them. And so SpareFoot, in case y'all don't know, it's like hotels.com or Expedia. It's like an aggregator where you can list your facility there. If they rent you a unit, or technically if they reserve you a unit, they charge you some dollar amount. Usually it's a percentage of the rent.
A multiplier.
It's actually a multiplier of the rent. 1.5 times the first month's rent or 2x, depending on what market you're in. So if you are a SpareFoot customer, this is an important note. You can talk to them and say, hey, we'd like for you not to run ads on our brand. If my facility is called Little Vine Self Storage, when customers Google Little Vine Self Storage, I want to be the first company they find. If I'm SpareFoot, I could also run an ad that gets me above your listing. And now the customer might think I found you, but I actually found SpareFoot. And SpareFoot's renting that unit. Now you're paying SpareFoot. So if SpareFoot's in the house, if Storable's in the house, this is a good conversation to have with your Storable rep to ask them to not run ads. And how can you do this? Just Google your brand name and see if there's a SpareFoot ad with your brand name in the actual ad. If you have any questions about this, Stacy has plenty of experience. It can help you talk to the right people because this is a good way to spend a lot of money unnecessarily. Any questions there? Okay. This is cool. So this is how Universal Storage Group tracks their cost per acquisition. They internally use cost per lease, I believe, is the term that y'all use. CPL, there it is. It's on the screen. Yeah. So how they do it is they add up all of their marketing spend. SpareFoot, Google Ads, website costs. Do you add human labor do you add like your team? Okay. So just all the services. And then you divide that by the total number of move-ins for that particular store. And in aggregate, in 2023, their average was around $89 per lead or per lease, which is actually pretty impressive. Which means if you look at this in aggregate, so your average rental is probably anywhere between 120 and 140 right now, right? So you're spending less than 1 month's rent to get a customer who might stay for 14 months. So if you're thinking about this from a true ROI perspective, every day, if I give you $89 and you give me $1,400 back, and I'm investing with you. So this was really cool. Now, did zero marketing. So the question is, in case you didn't hear him, is what would this number be if you did zero marketing?
That can never occur. It never did zero marketing.
There's that. So there's a school of thought. I have an answer for you. But that's a great, Ann started it for me. So there's the idea of, what if I did no marketing, right? What if I did no website, no Google Ads, no SpareFoot, and I just built, just like this guy over here, since 1970s. John has built facilities and he just walked away and they come in. Now, I'll say this, and I'm saying this in jest, but I think the reality is, you can risk that. And I think there are some facilities, and I think even within the Universal Storage Group brand, there are some facilities that you do minimal marketing for. Because they're either on a great street corner or maybe they're in a market that has high demand but low supply, right? And for some of their facility, it's probably way lower than $89.
What
Yeah.
say drive-by is now? Because when we started, they used to say drive-by was 30%.
Drive-by still.
It's still 30 to 40%. Yeah. Yep. The main difference now is without the yellow pages, 60% is online. 30 to 40% is still drive-by. So signage is still a big part of the deal. But Brooks, to answer your question though, I think there are some facilities and you should know your area. Now, you can test this. There are some facilities that are stabilized. Maybe you've crossed that 80% threshold. You're 80% occupied and you're like, you know what? I'm making good cash flow. I don't have an investor that I need to return cash on. I can experiment for 6 months. Me dry up every marketing channel. You can do that. I have operators who have. I have my own clients who tell me, you know what? We're good. We're at 90-something%. We're going to just pull back everything. What ends up happening is either two things. One is nothing changes. Like nothing changes. They still get the same rentals. They're still maintaining occupancy, but because they were already stabilized, instead of renting, they don't need to rent 20 units this month. They just need to rent 3. So they're okay. The other thing that happens is, that occupancy is now going to start dipping, right? But they were at a position of strength to experiment. So it's hard for me to stand up here and say, you can have a $2 cost per lease if you don't do any marketing, because I think that's a dangerous place to be. Did that help answer the question? All right, let's hear it. Yes.
Markable wording. Mark.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yes.
Hard.
I think you're right. I think so what Brooks is saying is that, yeah, so in aggregate, this looks really nice, and it is really nice. But the question is, what happens if you group them separately? And I think there's three obvious buckets, right? Bucket number one is the walk-ins and the phone calls, right? That's bucket number one. Bucket number two is your Google ads, because you can track that, right? You can track, I spent $1,000 on Google ads. How many of those actually converted to paying customers? You can track that. And the third one that's really easy to track is SpareFoot. The reason I picked those three is those three are the easiest to track. There are other buckets that are obvious, but they're a little bit harder to track. Let's say you run a billboard. Can't really track a billboard. People can tell you that you can, but it's really hard to, right? But those three buckets I gave you, the drive-ins, Google ads, and SpareFoot, all relatively easy to track. Now, with SpareFoot, you're probably looking at $200-300 per lease, easily, in most markets. And is that fair to say? Yep. Google ads, depending on who's running them and how well you're running them, you can probably get $120 cost per lease. Probably even less, depending on the season of the that you're running these ads in, right? So I think the really savvy operators, including Universal Storage Group, they are tracking their acquisition costs and segmentizing them, and then deciding, okay, am I happy with the individual margins? And then, of course, tracking it in aggregate helps you just lump all your marketing together. Because here's the other reality. And I think, who actually, in this room, show of hands real quick, who runs Google ads? Let's focus on that for just a moment. Who runs Google ads for your facilities or has Google ads, even if you're not the one running them? So quite a few of you, right? And who's to say that I saw your ad and I didn't rent online, but I did rent in person later? How do you attribute that? Do you have a science for that? Sir, I think you raised your hand. How do you attribute that? So I saw your ad. You don't know that I did, but I did. I clicked on it, but I didn't rent online. I rented in person tomorrow. So they might tell you, yeah, right? So that's hard and that's tricky. So Brooks, I think to get to the root of what you're asking about, that attribution is really sticky and really hard. The online to offline attribution. There are industries that have figured that out. Self-storage is not one of those. We haven't quite figured, what you're doing is probably as good as it gets. Make sure that you ask every customer, right? But not every customer is going to remember that they saw you from an ad or they just saw you on the Google Maps. They might have seen you on both. And what we recommend our operators is to not figure out the voodoo or the secret sauce of attribution, and really just track the easiest KPIs that you can track over time. And it can get as easy as this. Out of all your marketing spend and divided by all of your net new move-ins, or split into those three buckets that I recommended. Your online rentals, which can come from Google ads or organic, your SpareFoot rentals, which is pretty easy to track because SpareFoot gives you that list every month, and your drive-in and in-person move-ins. But shout out Universal Storage Group for actually tracking this. I'll talk to a lot of operators who don't. And I think this is a really cool metric to just track over time. Last group that we'll talk about is a group called Storage Asset Management. Alyssa Quill is their founder and CEO. She's super awesome. We talked to Melissa Stiles, who's their VP of marketing, and they do some really unique things that I think may not be applicable to every facility, every style of operator in every market, but there's some things worth mentioning. I think there's some things you can learn from them, even if you are a solo operator. So for example, they have 14 members on their marketing team. Stacy, how big is USG's marketing team? 3. All right. So Universal Storage Group is doing a lot with 3 people. Things we didn't even get into with the things they do is they host open houses. For every new facility that opens, I attended one and it was very well put together. They have 3 people. Sam, with almost 600 facilities, they have 14. So they can just do a lot more than I think the average operator can. Jane is just one person. As awesome as she is, just one person. They take, I'll get into the influencer thing in just bits. I'm going to come back to that because I think that's potentially a misleading term, but I think they do something really neat, unique there. Novel, at least. They don't underestimate the basics. And I thought this was a really good note. So whose facility has electronic gate access? Whose facility has security cameras? Whose facility has pest control? Whose website talks about all three of those things? You should talk about all of those things. Not only talk about it, you should have photography of all of those things. Because those are things that customer cares about. I don't want a rodent or cockroaches in my storage unit. I don't want that. And so have a photo of, I don't know what you would do, a little exterminator guy with a little thing, but you want to talk about the basics because your consumer, think about your customer, your tenants. This is the first time, most likely, that they're renting storage unit, right? They might have heard about self-storage, but for them, this is probably the first time they're ever rented. Might be the first time they've ever stepped foot on a storage facility. And maybe the first time they've ever visited a self-storage facility website. If this is the first chance that they get to buy or rent a storage unit from somebody, might as well be you. And you might as well educate them as much as possible. So yeah, we have all those things. So what that your neighbor has all of those things also? The fact that they found you and now you're able to educate them, you have all of those things. There's a little, I've never seen it, but I've heard it. There's a segment on some show, a famous show recently in the last few years, and called Mad Men. And there's a scene where he's trying to pitch cigarettes. And all cigarettes are, who's seen this scene? Anyone in this room seen that scene? Yeah. So all cigarettes are smoked and all of those things, right? They're sun roasted. All cigarettes are sun roasted, but mine are sun roasted. And so that was their pitch. And that was the show. So Google it. I think it's an interesting thing. But the idea is you're marketing to the person who's in front of you, and you can't assume that they know everything. And I think the really savvy operators know that. So I thought that was a cool note that they took the time to talk about. They also know where their customers are coming from, and they have done things like AI to generate content. They've done use AI to generate imagery and icons for their signage. Pretty neat stuff what they're doing. So I do want to get to the influencer thing real quick. So one thing they've done, and we all know what, or at least when I say the term influencer, we know what that means, right? Someone who's online on TikTok or YouTube and people like them for whatever reason. And so what they've done, which I think is very neat, is some of their tenants are influencers. Maybe they're not world famous, right? Maybe they're not, everyone doesn't know them, but maybe their community knows them. And so they're managers because they're engaged. They're managers because they know their customers. They're like, oh yeah, hey, I have this lady. She uses our storage units to store all the clothes that she buys for her TikTok channel. She might have 2,000 followers. We're not talking about super famous. Maybe more than that. It was, so they've changed. Okay. All right. So now they have standards now. That's killer. So Stacy said that they actually have a 10,000 follower cutoff for the influencers. And so if they have a tenant who stores and who does some kind of online thing, they will collaborate with them, either give them a couple free months. Some of them they paid cash, but it's not a lot of cash. We're talking like $500. And all they have to do is film at their facility and mention it some way, somehow in a natural way. So if any of your tenants also do those things, some of their tenants do woodworking stuff, crafts, lots of arts and crafts type people, a lot of the clothing fashionista type people. Those are the typical influencers. And talk about cost per acquisition, Brooks. They've spent, Carly, you remember the actual amount?
Lauren?
Yeah. They're also doing that as well. So they've spent, I think in aggregate, just, I would say $5,000 or $10,000, right? In aggregate across all their stores to do this initiative. And they've attributed over 300 rentals. So if you do 300, the maths. And so it's pretty, now, of course, again, we can say they might've found you elsewhere, and that might be true. But I think for this one campaign, I thought it was really neat. Now, Not every facility can do this. Maybe in Warner Robins, we don't have a lot of influencers. We don't know, but maybe you do, right? But I think the idea here is they leverage their manager's relationship with their tenants to feed that back up to corporate to be like, hey, I have a tenant who's really cool. I think we should talk to them. And here's their TikTok channel. And so I thought it was pretty neat. When we talked to Melissa about it, it sounded like relatively low effort and overall relatively low cost and has yielded some pretty decent results. And so they've also done some cool things with value pricing, which is this good, better, best pricing scheme that allows the customer to upgrade to a nicer unit if they want them to. And they also treat their cost per acquisition very similar to what USG does. Of course, they have it segmented, but at the end of the day, the metric they care about is the overall. So they just add up all of their costs and divide it by all of their move-ins. Now they have a number that they can track on a month-over-month, quarter-over-quarter basis. So we just talked about 4 really cool operators in varying sizes. 4 or so facilities with the Flying Storage Group, 200 plus facilities with Argus, 70 plus facilities with Universal Storage Group, and almost 600 facilities with Storage Asset Management. And of course, we talked about, let me just go all the way back to the beginning here. They're already doing all of these things. Good website, good Google business, good reviews, good managers, all the things that they're already doing all of these things, but they're finding ways to rent more units by incorporating all these other cool, amazing things. So how can you as an individual operator, who in this room owns 1 facility? 5 facilities? So most of us are more than 5 facilities. Okay. So about half of us are representing bigger brands, and about half of us are just single or 1s and 2s, right? So number 1 here is, if you don't have, and actually Brooks, you and I had this conversation yesterday. If you don't have the competency in-house, meaning you don't know how to do it, you don't love it, find someone who does, right? If you're not a designer, find a designer. If you're not a data analytics nerd, find someone who is. And I imagine there are data analytics nerds in this room that I'm looking at who would love to sit down with your own data and show you what they think and how they think about data. And I think that's the number 1 thing that individual independent operators can do, is talk to someone who loves this stuff. If you're not a designer, if you're not an architect, go talk to Jeff. He looks like an architect. If you don't do the thing well in-house, if you're not a technically savvy person, if you're not a marketing savvy person, if I wanted to build a facility, that's not my competency. I'm going to talk to Jeff. I'm going to talk to John. If I need to operate a facility, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to talk to Kevin. I'm going to talk to Stacy, because that's not my competency. Now, if you want to talk about websites and online rentals and technology, yeah, you can talk about, I can do that all day, and that's exciting for me. So I think that's the number 1 thing that any individual operator can do, is to join the associations, which y'all are here, so I'm preaching to the choir. But I think really though, find the people who are passionate about the thing that you need help with and go talk to them. Right? I would talk to Brooks about investing strategies because he's done it really well. Number 2 here is take a good look at all the channels. If you are using SpareFoot, ask yourself, honestly, going back to the root of Brooks' question, are you spending $89 per rental if you incorporate SpareFoot? Or are you spending closer to $400 or $500 per rental? And at that point, is it worth it? It still could be. The ROI is just not as great, but it's still ROI. And I think that's the question I get a lot is, should we use SpareFoot? I don't know, maybe, probably. Even if you spend, I'm not saying this is good, but I'm saying even if you spend $500 and you get $1,400 back, who's to say that's bad? It's not as good as $89 to $1,400, but who's to say that's bad? And a rented unit is better than an empty unit. And at some point in time, you have to take pride out of it and actually just look at the data and ask yourself, is that good? And I think you can decide once you actually look at your data. The other thing is be a part of the community. Host open houses if you're actually, anyone building their first facility right now? Anyone going to have a new facility open this year? If you build one in the future, have an open house. And Stacy can show you how to do it really well. It was the best. I've only been to a handful of open houses, and this is the first self-storage open house I went to. Awesome. Well done. It was really awesome. But be a part of the community in other ways too. So Universal Storage Group hosts events at their facilities. Kevin, do you all host events at your community, at your facilities? Yeah. What are the typical events that you might host, Stacy? Yeah. Toys for Tots. Yeah. So on the spectrum of liability, you guys are all the way on this end. You want everyone to come on your facility, right? So if I'm Scott Zepker up here, the question I'm getting is, ain't that bad? But isn't that bad? Yeah. There you go. So you can CYA and it'd be just fine. And so there are great ways to be a part of a community and still be a compliant and safe business place. And also, yeah, if you have a slick oil spot, make sure it's not slick. Yes. And then make it easy for your customers. Everyone in this room who has a facility, raise your hand when I said, do you have a website that does online rentals? Now, my challenge for you is rent a unit from your own facility later today. Right after this lunch, before you go get your car, Google your facility, go to flexstorage.com or wherever your facility is, go to that facility, find a 10 by 10 and rent. And I want you to think about, oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. Thank you for coming. And thanks for the comment about the parking. I want you to be thinking about three things when you do this easy thing. Number one, do I like what I see? Just visually, just aesthetically, right? Does this facility make me feel safe, secure? Does it look like I want to store grandma's ashes in here? We were just talking. Actually, Travis said there was a whole grandma in a casket at a facility that was crazy. I think that's a top 3 crazy. But just ask yourself, do I like what I see? So that's number one. Because if you like what, then now you can proceed to number 2. When I decide to rent, how many clicks does it take me to actually rent that unit? Is it like 3 clicks or is it like 27 clicks? Because we've all been on websites that take 27 clicks and we're less likely to complete that purchase process and decide, I'm going to do this later. And then you might forget to do this later. I did this recently. So my wife and I are having a baby. My daughter's going to turn 2 in June, but my son will be coming and joining us at the end of May. And so my daughter won't get to have a birthday party because my wife will be recovering. So we're going to have her birthday party this weekend because we love her and we can do that. And why not, right? And so I was supposed to order the catering 2 days ago and I started the process and it was 27 clicks. And guess who finished the catering process this morning on the way to Atlanta? I did. And it's because I was reminded. And I set a reminder for myself. My wife didn't have to remind me, but because I was like, this is too many steps. And if you make it easy, the customer will more likely finish with you. Now, it could be just like me and they will finish it later, but why risk it? If it's 3 clicks, they're more likely to just go ahead and knock it out and you don't have to worry about that. So number 1 was ask yourself, do you like what, not just like our customers, do you like it? Number 2, how many clicks did it take to actually rent your unit? And number 3 is, how much information are you collecting from this consumer? Right? Some of this is the legal thing, but do you really need to know their second-born's name? Do you really need to know their social security number? Do you really need to know their driver's license number? Do you really need them to upload their driver's license? If you do, great, go do it. But ask yourself, do I really need that? Or is there another way to get that information later? Yes, there is. And that's what we typically recommend is, get the basic information. Name, email, phone number, address, maybe, right? But all the other stuff you can get later. So that's how you make it easy. So number 1, make it look good. Ask yourself, do I like what I see? Are the photos good? Does it look safe? Number 2, is it 3 clicks or 27 clicks? It can be 10, just don't make it 27. And then number 3 is, how much information is the customer having to give you in order to pay you money? That's how you make it easy. So there are some other things that are no cost that all the operators that we talked about today take advantage of. Number 1, Google Business Profile. This isn't a session on that, but that's where all your reviews are. You can publish your photos, your office hours, your gate hours. If you don't have your gate hours published on Google Business Profile, take advantage of that so your customer can know when they're open and they can know when they can access their things, which may not be the same set of hours. You can use Yelp. You can use other social media profiles. Of course, there are great ways to get reviews. There's actually a new company in self-storage called Storage Reach. I always love to shout out storage companies, but they help people to get better reviews for their facilities. You can bonus your managers. I'll tell you about a cool bonus program that one of our clients did. They're based in Florida. They did a friendly competition. They have 9 facilities. They did a friendly competition And there were 3 prizes, $1,500, $1,000, and $750. The store with the most reviews, and they had to get 100 minimum over a 90-day period. So about 1 review a day. The store with the most reviews with 100, you had to qualify, you had to get 100 minimum. The store with the most reviews, that store split $1,500. Most people will do a lot of things to get $1,500, right? And then the second store would be 1,000, and the third store 750. And 6 of their 9 stores qualified. 6 of their 9 stores got 100 reviews. Yeah. And so what they did was all the stores that qualified, they gave them 750 anyways, which is really awesome that they did that. But think about that. So if you own a facility and you have a manager who's awesome, incentivize them to get reviews, because that helps people find you. It helps you build trust with future customers. Like I mentioned earlier, don't buy reviews from the customers. There are, of course, costly stuff, or things that maybe not costly, but things that cost. Things like salaries of good employees. You can outsource, right? You can hire designers, you can hire website people, you can hire Google Ads people, community involvement stuff, swag gifts. We talked to an operator in North Carolina, and actually I'd love to get Stacy's take. How much do you spend on swag, like at your facilities, like little welcome kits? Okay. So that's not too crazy. Yeah. And so you might have a swag kit that costs $5, $10 a unit, or there's about,
Free.
or 3, closer to 3. And these little swag kits are just friendly and they're nice. Throw a little water bottle in there, right in the unit. Customers are going to feel love, and they're going to feel smart about their purchase decision. Of course, sponsorships, you mentioned baseball teams, car washes, Toys for Tots. Those are all great things that may cost a little bit of money. Chambers, who's all part of their local chamber of commerce? So the nice thing about being part of the local chamber of commerce, one, I think like you can be part of the business networking community. I think that's nice. That's a nice thing to do. But I think from a digital perspective, the primary benefit is you get like a little backlink back to your website. The chamber's website is often a very highly regarded website because it's like an official entity, and you get your little business listed there and it points back to your website. Google is going to like that. And so that's a nice little perk. And of course, we talked about Google Ads, pay-per-click, and aggregators. So thank you for letting me come and hang with y'all. We went through a lot of stuff today. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Sam, thanks for having me.